Well, let's just start about what is going to be discussed at this meeting. It is an annual meeting, and this is not something that's quite new. One of your reports was saying the issue that we're seeing in the Horn of Africa is not like a tsunami. It didn't just happen on us. We have known about this for a while. What are the discussions that are going to come out of this conference that begins?
Thank you. We're here to identify, to look for a long-term solution for the Horn. I think we all agree that each time there is a crisis, we look for short-term solutions to save lives. That is fine. But at the last meeting in Addis Ababa, the pledging meeting, where we, the bank, pledged $300 million for the Horn, we also agreed that we need to build resilience in the Horn to ensure that this kind of crisis can be managed in the future so they don't become a humanitarian crisis.
So long-term, what are the long-term things that you need to do so that, like you're saying, that every year you're not just, dealing with crisis and emergency right now, but then you are looking at long-term solutions for the region?
Managing livelihood in arid areas around the world is not a rocket science. All over the world, droughts do happen, but droughts do not become famines. And so what we plan to do is to identify the kind of investments required in that region, be they in infrastructure, in water management, getting markets to function, to ensure that once the next crisis comes, the people who live in this region are able to minimize the impact. The people living in these areas require as much investment as those living in farming areas. And I believe that the international community and ourselves are now clear what has to be done. And at this meeting in Nairobi, we shall be looking for an agreement at better coordination so that we don't simply throw money at the problem, but we build capacity in the region. We build the ability of the region itself to deal with the crisis. And I'm fully confident that in the far not distant future, this region, instead of being a basket case of hopelessness each time there is a drought, there will be mechanisms in place to ensure that they can minimize the impact and indeed get on the path of rapid development as other parts of the African continent are doing.
In terms of seeing those projects and seeing that development happen, are you seeing projects right now that you could come in as the bank and be able to fund and help grow to be able to deal with these issues that you raise?
At the end of the day, it is all about incomes. If there was a drought today in this region and the people who live in the Greater Horn have adequate incomes from their production, they can purchase food on the market. But what I've seen in the past is that these people who depend largely on animal production, the animals die or they are sold at giveaway prices, and so they become destitute. So it is important to build income-generating capabilities in this region, as well as the Sahelian region of West Africa. That can be done. There are techniques which have been used elsewhere, and we're prepared to deploy all our knowledge and the toolkit.
In terms of just giving us detail, I mean, we've got quite a few countries in the Horn of Africa. Can you give us detail when you talk about techniques that you would be able to employ, knowledge that you would be able to impart to this region? Can you give us solid examples of some techniques or some kind of a program that you see working right now and being country specific?
Okay, of course, there will be short-term solutions. Those short-term solutions must involve increasing the level of infrastructure investment and water management. That is the beginning point. And therefore, it means for the governments of the region to somehow reverse the marginalization and neglect of some of those regions by building roads, water management schemes up there. But in the longer term, what you're looking at basically is to stop pastoral communities become nomads in this region, become gradually stationary communities, so that you can increase the incomes. Do you know that this region exports live animals each year of 1 million to the Middle East? Just imagine if we're able to add value to that production. It would increase incomes dramatically in this region and to ensure that whenever there is a drought, it can be managed, as has happened elsewhere in other parts of the world.
What are some of the successes the bank has seen in this particular region? When you have these discussions annually and you have had these meetings, what are some of the success stories that you've had so far?
You know, the Eastern African region is one of the most dynamic parts of the African continent. It does not have, at least until recently, a lot of underground wealth, but it has been able to register economic growth above 7% per year over the last 7 years. I imagine that if there had not been the crisis in Somalia and the remaining issues in the Sudan, this region would be growing even faster. And so what we've been doing is to emphasize, especially energy pools. We're now investing here in Kenya to enable the country to import electricity from Ethiopia. We've just completed a $300 million project to enable Djibouti to import energy from Ethiopia. We're building major road networks in this region, connecting countries, to enable the markets to function, to bring down the cost of doing business, and I think that we're on the way to succeeding.
You wrote a piece last year, and in that piece you said we need to accept that the era of external public funding is coming to an end. Just talk to us about what that would mean, because I think essentially that is saying that Africa has to do for itself, and that the era of us looking for outside donors and outside funding is coming to an end. What is the onus on an organization like yours to be able to meet the demand so that Africa is doing for itself?
You know, the total GDP of this continent is over $1 trillion. That is the same as Russia and Brazil. But we are 54 countries, and the first item is greater economic integration to unlock the potential of this continent, to allow talents to move around the continent. Now, with the problems in the Eurozone and in the older markets of the world, it is clear that we need to maximize, optimize investment flows from both traditional partners and new partners, but at the same time, increasing mobilization of our own resources domestically. I'm not saying by any chance that outside support is not needed, but I think it will become less and less important as countries like Ghana, like Zambia, like Kenya are able to generate domestic resources and tap into markets for capital and trade as other countries have done. And so unlocking our potential, mobilizing domestic resources is the best way to deal with the current challenges in the global economy.
Mr. Kaberuka, I want to quickly ask you, you've been quoted as saying famines are a reflection of policy deficits. In the Horn of Africa, what kind of policies do we need to see in place to see that we're not seeing this, that in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, we're not going to continue seeing millions of people starving when there's still so much potential for growth in those countries?
I think the most important thing in this region is to bring to an end the crisis in Somalia. Because with so many internally displaced persons, with so much mayhem in the region, it will diminish the opportunities of the region. So it is important to deal with issues in the Sudan, both north and south. It is important to bring to a closure the 20-year crisis in Somalia. And it is important to build especially the energy market in this region of East Africa. That done, I'm quite confident the financial depth here, the skills of the people of East Africa will enable the momentum to be built once those external issues have been dealt with.
Just in terms of the funds that are available, I think at the last reading, I don't know what the numbers are now, but at the last reading, it seems as though the analysis of available funds there to build drought resistance in the Horn of Africa was $1 billion for the first 3 to 4 years, and then $2 billion for the next 15 years. And if you're just thinking of how many people are affected right now, we're talking about millions of people that are facing starvation. Are these funds enough? And just looking at the numbers, it doesn't seem like it. How would you be able to feed all the people that need urgent food aid right now?
Please make a distinction between short-term humanitarian emergency aid, which is not our business, and I hope the international community will do as much as it did last time. We're talking here about the long-term resilience of the region. To ensure that the next time round there is a crisis, the region does not require emergency humanitarian support. So we're talking about long-term resilience, and that requires funding. We have put ourselves, as I said, over $300 million on the table. Other partners will be doing the same. But it's not simply about money. It is about working differently, building the capacity of IGAD, the capacity of individual countries, investment in infrastructure. This is about resilience, about long-term solutions, not about short-term cap in hand, looking for support every time there is a drought in the Horn of Africa.